I'm going to walk you through some issues with the detours around the East Perth power station works at the moment. What the issues are? Well, there's a lack of signage in some places. Some of the signage that is in place has been poorly placed. There's uncertainty about the route to take in both directions for cyclists. The footpath is too narrow in places for use as a bidirectional bike path. You've got drivers speeding into and through the detour, making it dangerous for cyclists. And who gives way to whom at the intersections? I'm going to ride back and forth through the detour a couple of times and talk you through it. So for instance, that sign there is well placed and easy to read, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the detour. If the detour signage was that clear, this wouldn't be such an issue. Have a look at this sign. It's facing in the correct direction and it's all smashed up. So that's not of a huge amount of use, but at least you can read it as you're approaching it, and it's got an arrow pointing in the right direction. That sign, you can't read it until you've gone past it. So what do you do at night? Well, you'd probably just about turn into it, wouldn't you? Same with, as we come along here, this sign, you only get to see it as you turn left. There's, what I would expect it to be is a sign over, like I've photoshopped in on the right there, that you'd read as you're coming along, of course with the arrow pointing, up this way, not to the left. But that is better placement of signage, something you can read. I mean, when we're driving on the road, you don't put signs facing sideways as you approach them. Now, similarly, that sign is well placed and it's quite clear, and it tells me exactly where to go. Thumbs up on that one. Problem is, as I come around the corner, where do I go now? Do I go on the footpath or do I go on the road? It is not obvious which path I'm supposed to take. Now, I can see that there's red barriers up there on the road, so I guessed I will use the path. But I was looking ahead. I shouldn't have to do that. There should be signage back there saying use the path. Now, this path is okay as a bidirectional bike path. It's got sufficient width, I think. You're not going to risk colliding with someone coming the other way. And when I rode through here, I did see a whole bunch of cyclists up the top as I was coming through, but I didn't actually run into another one coming the other way. Now, at this intersection, I stop here, and who gives way to whom? And how am I supposed to see cars coming up that street with signs blocking my view? And the other thing you've got to be wary of here, and I rode up and down that street and had a look, there are drivers speeding through the detour here and speeding up that street. So you've got a risk there of getting clobbered crossing that intersection because you can't see to your right, and as you're coming the other direction, you can't see cars coming up behind you. Now, I ducked into a side street, and when I came out, I was on the road because there was, no clear indication that I was supposed to use that footpath, which is a pretty crummy footpath for cyclists. There goes a speeding car, as I mentioned. She just turned off the e-parade quite quickly and then went belting down the road, just ignoring the 40-kilometre-hour signs. And as you can see, there was a swarm of cyclists coming out of there at the same time. Now, the only way I knew to go on this particular path is because I'd been here before. I was here a year ago. You can see the cyclist crossing here. Now, there is a sign over there on the right-hand side, so if you are on the footpath, you'd know to take this detour. But look at that car over there waiting to turn right across the road. They're going to be looking at the traffic coming towards them. They're not going to be looking at cyclists crossing the road there. And what I noticed is when they came around that corner, they floored it to get across the traffic. And so someone's going to be surprised one day. They're going to floor it to get across there, and they're going to run into some cyclists coming across the road. Okay, that part's all good. I've done that before. I knew where I was going. I didn't have to rely on the signage. Now, coming at it from another direction on another day, I come around the corner and, oh, surprise, signage. Okay, at least it's pointing me the right way, telling me to get across the road. What's the problem here? Well, look at the angles of the footpath. I'm going to run through that a second time because what you have to do is you got to get across here and then do more than a sharp right-hand turn to get onto the path properly. And that means you're crossing the road there quite slowly. You can't zip across, and that puts you at risk of people turning into this street too fast and not looking where they're going because they're looking for traffic that are looking for cyclists crossing the road. Now, this bit of path, absolutely terrible as a bidirectional path. If there were cyclists coming the other way, it would be a real problem. And I could also see myself getting hit by someone reversing out of a driveway and not looking. So why put cyclists on the path here? Why not put them out on the road? Why not carve out part of that road space? Because the other issue we've got as we get to this intersection, am I supposed to give way to cars coming from behind me to my right? And if so, how am I supposed to see them? Or are they supposed to give way to me? I don't have eyes in the back of my head. So I think, that's an uncertainty that needs to be sorted out, particularly remembering you've got drivers belting down that road and they're going to belt around that corner and they're going to hit someone if we're not careful. Now, as I mentioned previously, this part of the path isn't too bad if it could actually be kept clear of construction equipment and people, where you're not going to have cyclists running into each other because it is a reasonable width and the condition is not terrible. And then when we get to here, okay, well, I know where I'm going, so, not an issue. I can find my way back to, where I want to go. But, going back to those problems that I talked about at the start, so, lack of signage in some places, there's poor placement of signage, uncertainty about the route, you got speeding drivers, as we can see here, and at the end of the street, we've got a swarm of cyclists crossing the road who are at risk of getting clobbered by someone coming around that corner way too fast. So I think they're the issues that really need to be addressed by whoever's designed this detour or whoever's done the traffic management plan, because it can be much better than this.